how valuable lighting can be without being picked out as the main element. To me, I know that without the lighting it wouldn't look like that, right? But that to me means, okay, I've done a good job. I manage my client's expectations when I present the lighting design. So I need to make sure that when I do a concept, it's important to be able to create something that when they come to site, they're like, ah, yeah, that's what I expected to see. When I present a design, I want to make sure that what I present, I can actually realize.
We have an awesome opportunity to speak with a remarkable individual. We have Martin Klaasen here with us today. Don't even need to do this.
No, okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
Look, a bit of background about Martin is he's an award-winning lighting designer. He's a consultant, he's an lecturer, and he's a resource speaker with more than over 40 years experience in lighting design. Martin was the first person deployed in Singapore to set up the project lighting division for Philips all the way back in 1988 to start up their division for Asia Pacific based all those years ago. His passion for lighting design is now through his own company called Klaasen Lighting Design, where the head office is based in Singapore. We are very fortunate because Martin is actually based in Perth nowadays. And so he's obviously based here so he can share some of his knowledge and his learnings over the years. Many of his designs have received national and international lighting design awards and is widely respected by the industry and his peers. Just a bit of a brief synopsis as well is he's a sought after impact speaker and he has spoken at the Professional Lighting Design Convention in Europe, the IALD Light Fair in the USA, the Guangzhou Lighting Exhibition, the Hong Kong Lighting Fair, the Light Middle East, the Project Lighting and Lux Light in World Bets in Asia, and it just keeps going.
Enough.
Yes, please help me warmly welcome Mr. Martin Klaasen.
Thank you. All right, can you hear me well? Yeah? Okay, cool. Well, you said more than 40 years. In fact, this year is my 45th year in the business. So time to actually calm down a bit and relax. But thank you for the invitation. I've been here based permanently now since COVID times. I don't regret it. It's a fantastic time and place to be. I'll be sharing to you a few things because what I would like to do is share some things that I've come across as a lighting designer. Obviously, I come to project sites, I visited other manufacturers, not only you guys, but I've met many of those over the years. So I want to share all that, what it also means to me through a number of questions, and at the end of it, I'll leave the floor to you guys to ask me literally anything you want. There's nothing off the table. You can ask me anything. If I don't have the answer, I'll let you know honestly, but in principle, you can ask anything. So first, I would like to tell you a little bit more so that you get a better understanding from where I'm coming from and what I'm doing nowadays. First of all, as Paley mentioned, I have my Klaasen Lighting Design, which is my core business. Head office in Singapore, we have a little office here, we have an office in Shanghai, Jakarta, and nowadays also in Portugal and Europe. I've stepped a little bit away from the main business, trying to focus more on the educational things that also are important to me. That's why I like doing this kind of things, sharing my knowledge. There's no point for all the knowledge staying in here, so it's nice if I can share it with you guys. And that's why please ask any questions afterwards, so at least you can make use of that. And this is the platform on which I'm now actually speaking to you. I have created since many years Light Talk. I have a blog that maybe some of you may be following. I actually brought some books with me, and if I'm correct, those people who ask questions get the book. Is that something like that?
He's there.
So there's quite a number of books there. And that gives you an insight on my life as a lighting designer. Good, to the order of the day, so you know a bit what I'm doing in that respect. What I wanted to do is put a number of questions up myself, give you the feedback on how I think about these things and what these values mean to me as a lighting designer. And at the end, I'll invite you to really ask any questions that I may not have touched upon, because there's so many things. I'm just taking a snapshot here of things, right? So my first question is about the value of light. And I'm often asked, what is the biggest insight I have learned from working in lighting design industry over the many years when I do my projects? So, and the answer may possibly surprise you, because the answer is that for me, the best comment that I can get about a lighting design that I've done is actually no comments at all. Because if I don't get any comments, it somehow means it's totally and harmoniously integrated in the rest, because lighting doesn't exist by itself. It's part of architecture, it's part of interiors, it's part of an experience. Now, those of you from Singapore, they probably know the Atlas Bar. That to me is one of my favorite projects, because even when I enter it myself, I'm awed by the whole feeling. And it's not just the lighting, though I have to say, if you knew the Atlas Bar before, when it was still called the Divine, what was it called? Divine Bar or something, with the little angel going up the tower. That is a huge difference, but when you come in, you feel really immersed in this ambience and mood, and obviously lighting plays a very big role. So what has this done, the lighting? It has been integrated. Even if you look at this picture, even though it may be a bit small for you, but if you look at the picture, lighting is really not specifically present. It's in there, but you can't really see the light sources. Maybe the pendants show off a little bit. You see this structure here, right? That is suspended from the ceiling. It's suspended from 4 points only, so you can imagine the structural too difficult word. The technical prowess that went into designing that and making sure it's properly suspended, but you can hardly see it. And that was key in the whole design, trying to make the light disappear and really bring out the interiors. So there's, okay, the cove lightings, I think you can all imagine, but bringing out these decorative paintings in the ceiling by soft washing them, we had to really test all that, right? It was really important to make sure it comes out. It's not just, oh, we put it there. No, we actually did visual mock-ups on site to make sure. Even from this structure that's pending, we had like a 90-degree angle from 3 meters this way, 3 meters this way, fabricated, suspended, and tested to make sure that the lights are in here. You can see those little black points here. These are remote controlled lights. That means they can actually take away the furniture and use the space as a function space. So that means that if there's a different setup, you want to change the lighting. So rather than to climb up a ladder, because this is about 4 or 5 meters high, so that's not easy to adjust with your hands. So that was done with remote controlled lighting. We have different settings to account for that. But there's little lights included in here. If you look at it, it's all very nicely and softly integrated. And to me, that was key to getting this as a harmonious lighting. And when people come in, they look at the totality. They don't say, oh, the lighting is beautiful. Nobody really says the lighting is beautiful. It's more like, oh, it's the space. And if you've been in there, you'll know what I mean, right? So, yeah, that's basically, to me, how valuable lighting can be without being picked out as the main element. To me, I know that without the lighting, it wouldn't look like that, right? But that to me means, okay, I've done a good job. Now, if we talk about aesthetics and design direction, what has lighting design, how does it impact in project? How can you make lighting design impact? What do you do? How do you get it to sort of stand out? Because we have all standard solutions, but in order to create something memorable, sometimes you need to think out of the box, right? And that is something that you need to dare, because you can take a proven recipe in terms of lighting, just downlights or wall washers, but doing something that's not really done before or do it a bit differently is something that also takes guts, but also takes the necessary knowledge in terms of being able to educate your client on how to do that. Because you may want to do something, but if the client can't follow you and doesn't understand why you want to do it, then you will have a difficult proposition. So this is our Naera Hotel in Xitang, just outside Shanghai. Xitang is, by the way, where Mission Impossible 3 was filmed, where Tom Cruise runs over the roofs and along the water town. That's where this is, just outside. So this Naera Hotel has a courtyard right here, a water body. So there's no lighting in here. Everything is reflected in the water body. So that's also a very purposeful decision not to put any lights in the water, but use that water surface to extend the lighting and lighting effects. So you can see it's all reflected. So it's a modern architecture with a traditional Chinese pavilion in the middle. But you can see everything is reflected. So it's important to understand how the architectural and the rest work together. But what we did, you see here a bit of blue. What we have done in this project, as a dare to be different thing, is a light show. And the light show is done by using the public areas. So we've got like the reception bar here. There's a lobby entrance here. There's a library, there's a tea house, and behind there's a restaurant and another bar. All these are on a, all the courtyard facing areas have colored lighting, but they only come on at a certain time, like every half hour, I think the current program is, for about 5 to 10 minutes, and lights will change. So you can see here it's blue, then it becomes red, and sometimes the light moves, but it's not a very fast thing, it's a very soft, moving experience. So when you're in the bar, in the restaurant, suddenly you say, oh, something is happening, and you can see how that suddenly impacts, and people stand still and they look and, oh, that's nice. But it's not disruptive as being a very pompous light show, but it's something very soft in the background. And now this hotel is used by architects and designers. They come there for study tours, apparently, I've been told. Nice to know. But it's the design principles that we have applied in this hotel are now used for many designers, specifically architects and interior designers, to show them how light and architecture can be integrated together. The colors are very warm. It's really nice. What we also found that in countries like China, they're a bit more daring, right? So if you have ideas on what you could do, you also need a client that is willing to experiment. I find it in Australia a bit more difficult. They're very this way here, right? If you go to countries in Asia, possibly also because rules are maybe a bit less followed, I don't know how to say that nicely, you can do more things, right? They're willing to experiment. Here everything has to comply with this, comply with that, right? But in Asia and China specifically, I find the clients very willing to experiment and do things like this. Yeah, so that's one of the experiences that I feel you need to explore and sometimes push the envelope a little bit. And that's also where you need your relationship with you guys, because I may have it in here, but I also need to be able to talk to people like yourself that know what you can do with your products to see how we can manage to do this. All right? So that's an important message that I would like to share. Now, another one is differences in client demands. We have clients from all over the world that have different ways of dealing, right? So this is very much about what is important to a client depending on where you are. In Australia, my clients are different than when I'm in China. And I reference a lot to China because we do a lot of jobs also in China, India, Middle East. But I can now reference it also very well with what we do here in Australia. So when I focus on the projects here and in Asia, what I found the main difference is basically quality versus quantity, right? In China, every dollar counts. I know here as well, but it's different. In China, it's literally every dollar, right? Here, yes, of course, we want to meet budget, but a spec is a spec most of the time in Australia. And a lot of the clients, if I don't sign off, they don't sign off, right? We are currently working with NX here in Perth, right? But very strict. And they definitely, if I don't sign off on the project, they don't take the responsibility of signing off. In China, Asia is not the same. If I don't sign off, they don't care. It's, you know, right? I mean, I'm saying that a bit exaggerated, but that's really the case. So, for instance, here, this is the Hong Kong Jockey Club. That chandelier, you wouldn't be able to see whether it's crystal or just cheap glass, right? But there's a hell of a difference in price. If you're in China, I can bet you that's either plastic or very, very cheap glass, right? In this case, it was a bit different. There was actually one of those real chandelier makers, like it was Preciosa or Lasvit or some of those people. So that costs a lot of money, but most of the time, these kind of things in China are reproductions, cheap copies, right? And they save a lot of money. Now, I can push and say, well, I can't accept it, but how strong is that? That would be more the interior designer or the architect who needs to come in tandem with me to say, well, listen, the sparkle is not there if you don't have actual crystal glass, right? So that's one of the key elements that we have to work with continuously. Sometimes it's also called value engineering. I'm sure you have heard that word as well, where you start here and then you have to end up somewhere here because they don't have that side of budget. Now, tip or just secret sharing, if we want to end up here, we sometimes propose here, right? So we may know that the client only has this sort of budget, but in true Asian fashion, if I propose something here, I'll end up here anyhow. So I may as well propose here that when I got through my negotiation value engineering, I roughly arrive where I want to be. So what do? I add in a few lighting points that I know I can get rid of later on. Don't tell, yeah. But that's a way to somehow achieve where you want to be. Because you know that very often, but even here in Australia, there's also a lot of value engineering going on, right? But in China, in Asia, it's very strong. So you need to be prepared. Even for our own fee negotiations, if I want to have 100 as fee, I need to propose 120 because I will need to negotiate, right? So knowing that, but it finds its way in our lighting design as well. So sometimes we propose some extra downlights, some nice to have, but not, critical. That's how we can manage sometimes the cost-quality relationship. Yeah, so that's the cost versus quantity and quality. Now, service delivery, I mentioned to you before when I was talking before I started, is that service is really important, right? When we deliver our projects, we really need to have a very good relationship with the suppliers and the manufacturers. So what are some of the key issues that we face when we're delivering our services? Well, I think quality control and speed of delivery is part of it. I just mentioned value engineering. This needs an ongoing discussion with the specified products that we have in mind. In this case, we're talking to you, right? So if I have specified a certain level, sometimes we can engineer the product to a slightly lower cost by just simplifying it. I don't know, we haven't gone to that extent yet with you, but I've had projects where I had specified a certain brand. Let's say the fitting was $300 and the client said, sorry, I only have $200. So rather than to go to an alternative, I would go back to the manufacturer and say, listen, they only have $200 for this. Can we try and maybe simplify the product, or use whatever it is, maybe a simpler core element. Or I know most of the products are off the shelf and regularly manufactured, but sometimes there's an opportunity to simplify the product so that you can still be the one that supplies, right? So I think that's important to understand, that we not necessarily need to jump straight away to another brand. If we like what the product does, sometimes it can be simplified to still meet. We also look at potentially reducing the quantities, right? So not necessarily reducing the quality, but reducing the quantities. So taking out the number of lights. And then there is the speed of delivery. That, technically our clients always want it yesterday. I think that's common throughout the world. And specifically in Asia, I found that they and then you deliver it, and then you don't hear anything for a month, right? So they want it very fast, and then nothing happens. But that balance and finding the way to deliver the service is really quite important. What you see here in this picture is a project meeting somewhere in China. In this case, it was in Yangshuo, in the Guilin Mountains. It was freezing cold, it was January. I think it was 0 degrees outside, and we still had a meeting, but there's no heating. So as you can see, there's some braise, some coals, and we were frying bananas on that as well. But that was our meeting. But that also shows the sort of, how do you explain that? The relationship with the client, that we're still coming there, we're still doing it. So your delivery is not only having a meeting in a comfortable hotel room, but it's also sometimes going to site under the circumstances that are not always pleasant. You see people are wearing jackets and overcoats, and it was really cold. It was probably about 3 or 4 degrees in there, right? But we still have our meeting, and we try to walk ourselves through whatever issues there were on hand. I mean, one time I'm in Cape Mentel having a drink with a glass of wine, but the other day I may be like this in a meeting. So there's a lot of contrast. But what I'm trying to say is, servicing your client for us is really important. And that doesn't come just with us being there. It also comes with your support in the background, knowing that you have our backs when we specify the products. Now, the thought process is about what makes lighting a good design. And again, I'm trying to, because of my experience throughout Asia, Middle East, etc., I'm trying to give you a bit of a perspective between Eastern and Western values. And I'm using here NX Mall, which you can go and have a look at in town. So one of the key things that I want to say is that lighting design, the concept is as good as the final implementation. I can have beautiful renders, I can do beautiful concepts, but if it doesn't look good in the end, all that is not worth a lot, right? So what I need to do is to make sure that I manage my client's expectations when I present the lighting design. So I need to make sure that when I do a concept, so on the right hand, it's a render, which we created out of a 3D model. On the left is what it became in the end. Now, it's fairly close. I have it in this way. There's another color here. It's important to be able to create something that when they come to site, they're like, ah, yeah, that's what I expected to see, right? And in this case, this is what happened. Client was very happy, signed off, paid off, was all good. But it's really important to be as realistic as possible and manage the client's expectation in terms of what it is they're gonna get. There's no point in making, I've been to China, as some of you may have seen it as well. I see renders, and when I see the renders, I said, no way. Right? Because I know from experience that when I see that render, there's no way they're going to be able to do that in reality. Now the client may fall for it, say, oh, beautiful, it's nice. And then they come to site and say, huh, is that it? Yeah. So that's important. I think to me, when I present a design, I want to make sure that what I present, I can actually realize. And that again also relates back to how we develop the relationship between you guys and ourselves, making sure that we can deliver also on performance. Innovation. Now, this relates back also to IoT, because there's a lot of things happening in our world. Technology advances very, very fast. And for us, as for you, it's not easy to keep up with everything, right? So that's where our lighting design of things also comes in, but it's trying to understand what's going on and how do we reflect that in a project. So what I'm trying to say is that integrating innovation is in a way a progress, right? It's important to do that. And this picture, you know, shows that it used to be all about oil and things like that. That was the main commodity that drives the whole economy. Nowadays it's data. And that brings it closer to our turf, because data collection now happens in all the spaces. You have sensors everywhere, right? And what is happening is that the light fitting of the future, well, not so far future, some of them it's already here. It's a bit like your mobile phone. Let's say 15, 20 years ago, your mobile phone was only used to text, message and call. Who still use their mobile phone to do that? Your mobile phone is predominantly a data bank that you use to take pictures, to do your banking. Everything goes through your mobile phone. There's hundreds of apps which not much related to phones. You know, you FaceTime maybe with each other and things like that. So what is happening with the light fitting is pretty much similar. So there's a lot of things going into a light fitting that in the fitting of the future, I predict that 80% of the light fitting is all about data and had nothing to do with lighting. That means it's an IP point. You know, it is a, how do you call that? An internet point. There will be GPS positioning through that. You can monitor what's happening. You get air quality measurements, you can get sound measurements, you get temperature, humidity, presence, you name it. All these kind of things can be registered to a simple sensors. There are sensors that can do 3 or 4 things in one tiny little sensor, right? So because lighting is also present in each and every space, lighting is the ideal infrastructure to include data. And that's what we see happening more and more. Now, the sensor or the data collecting point is outside the lighting point most of the time. But it's only very short until that starts to be integrated, and it's already starting to be integrated in lighting. Some lighting manufacturers provide already the option to include a sensor in their lights, which can do some of these functions. Then it's not about what to measure, but what you do with the data. So you can collect any of this information, but what do you do with it? So then you need to convert this data information into useful content creation, let's say that way, in our case for lighting. But because lighting is our turf, as lighting designer, we need to somehow stay in control of that lighting point and not the data people that say, oh, I need 1 point here, otherwise my Wi-Fi coverage is not good, or I need this for my Bluetooth, this and that, whatever. So we are trying to promote for us as lighting designers to at least remain in control of what happened with that lighting point, even as the data content becomes bigger and bigger. Now, I don't know how far you are as Unios in terms of integrating smart components, data collection, etc. But if and when you do, this is something that needs very careful consideration, also when you message that to your end users and clients. But yeah, it is very much about that. I also mentioned here social media in a way, because nowadays, when we finish a project or when we design a project, it's also how is it going to look on Facebook? How is it going to look on Instagram, right? We've even had projects where people on social media commented on the lighting, and then we started to adjust the lighting, right? There's an interesting thing because we all are on our little mobile phone and trying to check out what's happening on social media, but it has a big influence on lighting design as well, because we need to create those money shots that people like to take pictures with, right? So that's an important part on doing a lighting design nowadays as well, thinking about how that can be promoted to the social media. Finally, before we go to Ask Me Anything, something about client collaboration, because we get presented quite a lot of projects, and every time I have to think, shall we do it, shall we not do it? So if you know the client, obviously no issue, but sometimes we don't know the client. Sometimes it looks good and you will know afterwards whether you had a good relationship with the client or not. So to me, it's all about trust and respect. I think if a client can respect you as a lighting designer, can trust you to do your job, then you have a good relationship. Because I've had too often that they want you there just to be able to point their finger, but they don't really always trust you, or they want to do their own thing. So developing a relationship with the client to us is key. Finding or creating an environment in which you feel that they trust you is also very, very important, right? And that they respect your decision, respect your recommendations. Now, that is a two-way street, because if they say, well, yeah, but it's nice what you want to do, Martin, but I don't have that sort of money to do that, or can we do it this way? So it's a two-way street. And when you show understanding for where they are, but you can also educate them at the same time why you want to do something, making sense for them to maybe spend the money to do something, that's where you create a really nice relationship. And this is one of my favorite photos where my client really hugs me at the end of the grand opening to thank me for what we have done. And as I said at the bottom, as a bonus, if you have a happy client, I can tell you they don't have any hesitation to pay you. So developing that trust and respectful relationship, I think, is key, but you have to work on it, and you have to really be open. It's not like my way or the highway. It is something that is a two-way street that you develop. This particular client, I'm doing 2 more hotels with him now. He's become a really good friend. But it's the relationship that we have developed, and his trust in that what I'm giving him is the best value for money. So, having said that, I would say let's take questions from you, because otherwise I can go on and on. There's so many things that you may want to ask me about lighting design, so please feel free. Anything you want to ask me, I'm happy to take it. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. That was amazing. Obviously, we've met before, and part of my role is between Western and Eastern design and culture, working across Singapore and Thailand with my colleague John, who's here today as well. I really like your contrast and comments between the two sides of the world. What would be your opinion of Unios, just in your experience with us so far, that makes us stand out in terms of what we offer, whether it's product or service? And the reason I ask is we see a lot of comparison to all sorts of brands, everything from very low market of names I've never heard of to some of the most elite and the best in the game. What would you say is maybe one unique thing that we offer that you've seen so far? I'm a bit prejudiced because I know Paley for quite a while, so that relationship is already important.
Be honest.
No, but that, as I mentioned, the relationship, knowing that me or my team can call you, right? Like, listen, we have specified your product, we really like your product, it gives good value for money, right? And I think where you are with your price point is also quite competitive. So I think that's an important thing. So you don't start off like the high Iguzini Urco level. You're, if I'm not mistaken, a bit more competitive. So that helps in the environment where we live in today, in the economical climate. But as I mentioned before, the service that you provide and the peace of mind that you give us is to me really important. Knowing that I can call Paley or yourself at any time if I have an issue, not only me but also my team, is something that's really important, because some of the lower brands, very cheap ones, whether from China, India, or whatever, wherever they would be, you can try and call them, but most of the time there's nobody home, right? Even the so-called warranty that they would provide, you ask 5 years warranty, sometimes even 10 years warranty, we may ask. You want to try with the cheaper brands? They will say yes, but if there's an issue with warranty, try to reach them, right? So that is a relationship that's being built up. You follow through on that as well. So it's not just something that we talk about. It's something that in real life, when projects come to life and we experience the relationship, the working relationship with you, which makes us work with you, right? To me, and of course you're not the only one, right? But maintaining that level of support and interest and willingness to support, I think is key. You have already very good products. We can have an ongoing discussion about how we can improve products further. If you want any input in that, I'm doing that sometimes with Paley. If we have some issues, like, oh, can we do this or that? That's on top, is the icing on the cream, or the cherry on the cream, whatever expression is. But that's important as well. But that relationship, that we feel comfortable and know that if we specify Unios, they'll be there when it matters.
Hi Martin, thank you for such an insightful presentation. I'm quite passionate about lighting design as well, so I have quite a few questions.
Yeah, go for it.
What would you say is your most memorable project that you've worked on?
I think it's those projects where, well, probably this one is certainly one of my memorable projects, because I got basically a hug of the client. I don't know how many of you have ever had a hug from your client, but to me, I haven't had a lot of those, right? I mean, they're normally very respectful, but to give me a hug, you know, that's something. It touches you because you can feel the passion and their happiness about what they have, right? So Xitang, if you ever come around there, please visit it. I think also the Atlas Bar in Singapore is one of those projects when you come in and you feel, I really did a nice job, right? Closer to home, we just completed stage 1 of the Headland Hotel, which was a property that just faces the turtle breeding beach. I don't know if those people know Headland, but it's called Centenary Beach or something like that. But there's turtle breeding, so the lighting that we needed to apply needed to all comply with turtle breeding, environmental, biodiversity, blah, 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 all these things, what you need to apply. But the client was also very, how do you say that, compliant in helping it come to life. Yeah? They were supporting it, even though it was way above the budget that they had in mind. They wanted to make a point. But when it was finished, they were so happy. Even Rita Schiafosi was the name of the tourism minister, she came down as well. She was they invited her because they felt this is something special. So that project also has a big meaning for me, because we managed to contribute with the lighting also to doing it in the right way, because there's a lot of talk about dark sky and light pollution and being friendly to natural habitat and all that. So that project really had a client that went along with it, supported it, of course uses it for marketing, etc. But that also gave me a lot of satisfaction being able to do that. Yeah.
In your many years of experience so far, have you had or what was the moment that was like, oh shit, like, and like during a project, and how did you overcome that?
Where do I start? My very first memory, I've got quite a lot of them, but I'll just pick out a few. Because it's not always flowers and good endings. One time, and it's not always, since I'm the boss of the company, the buck starts with me, even though my staff may have made a mistake. But I remember one day that we select, and I'm talking about 20 years ago or something, or maybe even more, but we had selected a light fitting from a catalog. But it was somehow put into a drawing in which we didn't read the scale properly. So the actual fitting, when it was installed, looked so minuscule compared to the actual dimensions that, it was clearly a mistake because we hadn't properly looked at the dimensions. It looked odd. Lighting luckily was okay, but what do you do as a lighting designer when that happens? Say, oh no, this is design intent. This is how we wanted it to be, right? So as a designer, you always have a whole list of things that you can go through, like why it's not your fault. But we know, of course, that we should have done better. Another thing that I want to highlight is the difference in culture and acceptance. Like I did a project many years back in Pakistan, and we did an office lighting. So if you follow standard rules for lighting levels in office, you talk about 300 to 500 lux or something for an office, right? So we went about it, designed beautiful and lighting, we achieved all this. And then when it was, did we get to install? Yeah, we get to install it. They said, well, it's way too bright. And why was it too bright? Because we didn't account for what they were used to work in. At that time, if you go to offices in Asia Pacific in general, whether it's India, Pakistan, Malaysia, some of the offices, they work with 50, 100 lux. That's a luxury already for them. And then we came with like 300 to 500 lux. We said, no, that's totally wrong. We should have designed maybe to 200 lux or something to improve, but so their mind is not set to that, right? So yeah, you can explain why it has to be 300 to 500 lux, but that I found was a missed opportunity to educate the client properly about where they're at, where they should be, and maybe find a way, a compromise in between, right? In the same way, like in Japan, they're very much used to having bare fittings. So they feel that brightness in an office works well. And then they complain that they don't have enough lighting on their desk, because obviously there's hardly any optics if you have a bare bulb. So we designed optics to really push the light down. So with half the amount of light, we could have double the amount of light on the desk. Again, they complained, oh, it's not bright. Now it was not bright enough. Because they were so used to, they said, yeah, but that's late. Now you can focus. Yeah, but we Japanese, we're different. Our eyes are different, or whatever they were saying. And it sounds strange, but that's the sort of weird discussions you have sometimes. So again, a sort of missed opportunity to communicate and educate. And we shouldn't be designing from behind our desk. We need to be able to be at the location to understand how people currently work and how your design will impact them. A lot of designers work from behind their desk and never actually go to the site where lighting is being implemented. So that's also a big lesson. Nowadays, it's very rare for me to take on a project if we can't go to site, certainly because we do projects all over the world. Right, here in WA it's maybe easy. You can easily go to a project, but if you have to go to India or China or Middle East, it takes something in extra cost for the client, also for you to go there. In the same way, based on that first story I told you, we nowadays hardly ever specify a product if we haven't had it in our hands and have been able to play with it. We don't that was one of the lessons that sort of triggered, never specify just from a catalog, just have it in your hands, play with it, make sure that you understand it, yeah.
Thank you, Martin.
We'll come back to you. Yeah, sorry to jump the queue, but it was just based on what you were kind of just talking about. So when it comes to like education on, you know, two big things is obviously what you mentioned, like colour temperature and brightness, especially, you know, people have so many varying ideas of what that specific person wants that may be against all the science and documentation and everything and out there. How do you go about kind of, obviously there's I'm not saying, you know, one right way, one wrong way, but there is a kind of way you probably should do things just based on, you know, the evidence and things. How do you go about educating people and then maybe them saying, no, just do it the wrong way, because that's what I like the ones that you were just talking about. Do you ever get to a point where you want to just...
Fuck it, go there.
Yeah, like, you really want to go in the way because there's 100 people and they're going to be in there for 10 hours a day, and you really want it to be beneficial for as many people as possible, I suppose.
So that's the sort of communication between you and the client. If you go in a meeting room with 20 different people, it's very hard sometimes to get through, right? If I'm in China in a meeting, first of all, I don't speak Chinese, a few words, but not really. And that's very hierarchical. So that means if I talk to one person, then that person needs to get approval from the higher authority, and there's like all this chain of command. So that the project manager says, yeah, I agree, it will be good. And then the next person, which is higher up, because the boss doesn't talk directly sometimes, so they will come, no, I don't agree. So first of all, the director, the communication line with the ultimate decision maker, the more direct it is, the better it is to sort out things. That as a general point. Secondly, I have my own style in how I like to design things. So I may like 3000 Kelvin, somebody else may like 4000 Kelvin. My reasoning for using 3000 or 2007 or 2000, whatever it is, are my reasons from years of experience. So it's about my ability to communicate why I'm the designer. So you hired me as the designer, right? So if you trust and respect me, that's what my recommendation is based on my experience in whether it's a hotel, whether it's an office or a sports facility, whatever. I have my experience and I find that this works best. Doesn't mean, so if the client comes up with, yeah, but I would like to do this way, what do you think? Then I won't be on my high horse saying, no, I'm doing it this way. No, you have to listen to your client. Number one prerequisite for a designer is to be able to listen, right? It's not about what I want, it's about understanding what the client wants, but with your experience, if he has something that could work as well, you can leave that as an option. Say, listen, your call. My recommendation is this. What you want is also possible, is not necessarily a bad thing. If it is a bad thing, I'll tell him. I say, listen, no, that won't work because this. Always give a reason. I can't just say no. But if his option is also nice, but I feel not really what I would do, but it's possible, I'll leave him the option. In the end, he is the client. He's the one that wants, but I have to explain and put it on a platter to him. Well, this is why I want to do this. This is what you want to do, what the plus and minus points are. And then you're trying to work it out that way, right? Most of the time that works. But the more interference there is in terms of people involved, right? The more difficult it is to achieve that. Yeah? Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elaine from the Vietnam team. So thank you for your presentation, Martin. I do have a question on the differences in clients' demand when you mentioned about Asian and in Western, when Asian all about cost over quality. So you mentioned about simplifying products if needed for cost efficiency. I would love to hear from a lighting design expert about what can be compromised for cost quality, for cost efficiency, if it's possible.
Of course, it's very project dependent. Value engineering is a very tedious job, right? So let me just lead you through the process, maybe that will help you. So when we design, we generally specify products that we are familiar with, that we know the performance, we know the quality, we know the end result, we know what it will give us, right? As I mentioned before, because we know the tendency to value engineer, we may select the slightly higher option when we do a design, possibly even a more expensive brand, knowing that we have a backup brand if necessary, right? It's just to understand, because sometimes when you ask the client for a budget, most of the time he said, no, we don't have a budget, right? But when you present the budget, they say, oh no, it's too much, right? So that's a typical way how it goes. So knowing that, we try to establish the performance and quality level that we want in terms of the lighting effects, the mood, ambience, etc. Which means we have product X, Y, Z that will do the job. But in selecting the product, we will try to be slightly above what we want, knowing that the client will most probably ask us to reduce costs. Then we have to present a budget, because once we have made a selection, we know the quantities, we know what type of fixture, and we will ask you, please provide me with a budget, provide us with a costing so we can let the client know this is what it will cost. When you give us a budget, we generally add in another 10% just to have some negotiation space, just for you to know, right? It's important, no, because we know how it goes, and then sometimes there's a contractor in between and all these kind of things. So we need to manage that process. So when the budget is presented to the client, which generally is ex-factory, we put all those disclaimers like, you know, without freight cost and without whatever, so they know, without installation sometimes as well, sometimes they want it, but generally like that. There's also an element of lighting controls and things like that. But so we present it to the client, and then when the client comes back and said, it's too expensive, you need to value engineering, we will go through that budget and we will focus on the high cost item. If I have 3 fittings of $2,000, there's no point in really trying to value engineer that. But if I have 100 fittings that are $1,000, then I can definitely try and do something. So I'll focus on the high quantity budget items, because that's how I can potentially. So if I have only 4 or 5 or just a few, normally we won't focus on that in terms of value engineering. It will be the big ticket items, because they have the biggest impact in terms of value engineering. Now, if we can simplify it, we may go back to you and say, listen, can you look at the price again, because this one is really tough for us. We would like to keep it in, but if you can sort of reduce it, that would be really helpful. Maybe you have a simplified alternative, right? In this case, you are a brand. If I go to Mondellucci, they may have a few alternative brands that they say, well, within the same supplier, we may be able to offer this or this, right? That's the way that would go. So we'll try to stay within the preferred supplier in this case. If it's still not possible, then we may need to look at another alternative. But that's we gradually work our way down. Yeah, so that's basically the process in which we try to work it. Sometimes we may be able to review the design a bit. So where we had linear lights, we may be able to achieve something similar with wall washers, for instance. So there may be design elements in which we can simplify the lighting without really affecting the mood and ambience and lighting effects too much. So that will be another avenue in which we can try and reduce costs, but it can be quite tedious. Another point I would like to mention is that there are clients sometimes that want, I don't know how many alternatives, right? So we do our specs and they want 2 or 3 other options. We try to avoid that because there's a lot of work, right? But yeah, that's another part of doing the value engineering is to look to all that. Yeah.
Hi Martin.
Hi.
My name is June and I work in marketing. So a lot of my job is actually looking at the finished projects and all of that and try to guess the lighting design intentions behind it. It's very hard work and I honestly lost half the time. But one thing I know about lighting designers and people who work in lighting is that you go everywhere and you just see the light everywhere. Yesterday I was walking with Paley and he's just like looking at the lights literally and commenting on everything. So I was wondering, what is your thoughts on like our lighting design? It's just also to help me understand, your thought process a bit more. Let's just take that breakout space at the back as a canvas, for example. If you can just give us like a little pointer on like what's great, what could improve, and what impressed you and about it, that would be great. I don't know if I'm starting anything, but
Where do I start? No, but
David to
no.
just leave the room for a minute.
No. But I have a very simple rule in this kind of thing. If I have not designed the space, right, it's very hard for me to comment, right? Because there may be so many reasons behind what is there that I'm not aware of. I can say, well, why did you choose this? I don't know all the background reasons. So as a professional, also respecting another professional that may have worked on this to achieve it, I generally stay away from comment. No, but it's very difficult because I may give you a comment, say, yeah, but that was because this or this or this. So it's an endless story in that way, right? Overall, I feel this place, I think you have done a great job. I was here at the opening when you guys opened this, and I think compared to the many factories I visited, many HQs of manufacturers I visited, this one really is somewhere at the top in terms of the way, it's not Urco, but it's quite close to the level of professionalism. Everything looks clean, is nice, is organized. Lighting levels are all very nice. The mood and ambience, I think, is befitting of what you're trying to portray here as a manufacturer. So I can only say congratulations with this HQ because you really make a point towards many other manufacturers around the world. So from my point of view, well done.
oh, David. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Long from Vietnam. Let's get back to the Atlas bar that you showed because I really liked it. And I have one question for you. What are the do and don't in hospitality, especially bars?
The do's and don'ts?
Yeah, for lighting.
Right. Good question. Because sometimes things, I just do it because I know that's how I do it. But thinking about why I actually do it is sometimes a bit more difficult. Well, an environment like a bar like that, it's about the experience, right? People go in, it's not about the lighting, it's about people coming in, socializing, feeling comfortable, and not sitting there and having a glary light. Or you need to put, the main thing that you do as a designer is to try to put yourself in the position of the end user. I need to understand what is it that's going on. I can't design a space if I don't know where the furniture is, if I don't know what is actually taking place in that space. Like many engineers, they will just put a uniform lighting grid for downlights and they dim it up and down, that's it. Our lights are focused specifically to what is going on in that space. Understand the flexibility that is needed when things change, right? Understand that there is an early day part of the experience and a late night experience as well. When you go down there in the Atlas bar, you'll notice that if you come there at 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, the lighting mood is totally different than when you come there at 10 o'clock in the evening. Everything has adapted and changed because people have had their meals, they're now more into drinking and socializing, and so it's more about the visual communication. In fact, we had, with the Atlas bar, when we did mock-ups, we even had setups that how close were seats compared to the coffee table how was the relationship when people were sitting down in terms of communicating with each other, in terms of where they can put their glass or their drink. So for us, one of the do's is to be involved in that process, understanding how the space is going to be used and how your lighting is going to contribute to the overall experience, right? As I said before, you can't design from behind your desk. You can do a big part, and the more experience you have, you can do more from remotely. But being in there, sitting in a chair, understanding how lighting impacts on how you communicate with your partner or your friends or your business relationship that you have there, that's really key to be able to design properly, right? It's also about, as I said, I don't want to see the lighting. It's about, for me, it's all about bringing to life the environment where you will be and where you will be using that space. It's not about the lighting. The lighting will make it happen, right? It's the glue that sort of brings everything together. But in the end, people that are there, they're not thinking, oh, the lighting, this or that. No, say, oh, I'm comfortable. I like chatting with you, you know? It's like you have this socializing aspect going on, in which lighting contributes in terms of mood and ambiances, right? So doing that means you also talk to an operator. The guys that are running the bar, they know also how they serve people, what is going on. They will tell you, oh, I need a bit more accentuation of this area, or this is where we have our displays, please bring that up a bit. You know, that is important to us. So that discussion, you're a part of the chain, right? You need to work as a team. You can't work on yourself, by yourself on this kind of project. It's really key to immerse yourself in what's going to happen and in collaborating with the whole team to get the result as the Atlas Bar. Vietnam, Singapore, go man.
Martin, John from Singapore. Yes, I heard your experiences and sharing regarding the LDOT especially.
Yeah.
So with that in place, do you foresee the future of the lighting design in your thought process? Will it be more towards the science or towards arts? Because or is project dependent here?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, one of the key questions sometimes is lighting art or science, right? And I think there's both. Obviously, we are sort of artists. I have a picture that I use where there are scallops on the wall, and the artist is having that scallop and moving that scallop as a painting around in the space, right? Because that's what we do. We paint with light in a way, because light produces visual effects. I can't see light here, it's just because it reflects off my hand that I know there's light. But I can't grab light, it's basically, it becomes visible once it reflects off something, right? Which means that scallops or lighting beams become visible when they reflect off space. So playing around with that, how that interacts and interferes in a way with space, that's the artistry, right? But knowing how to produce those beams, what sort of intensities, the color, that is technology, that's the science, right? So that's the combination that you need to have as a lighting designer, understanding innovation, technology, and having the artistic knowledge to implement it. Now, on your question of IoT, it's going to be maybe the third element that will come in, right? Science, you could potentially say it's science, but to me, data gathering is something on top of it, right? We have always worked without that. Now certainly it becomes part of it. Knowing how to deal with it is something that we are still exploring. There's of course a lot of, and now, mind you, I haven't even mentioned AI and ChatGPT and all these kind of things, because that's a whole new world by itself. But we are using these kind of things already, AI, ChatGPT. You know, some of my blogs I write them myself, but the introduction, I can say, Ingmar uses AI or ChatGPT to do a small summary and introduction. Because it saves time, you just input. So now there's also lighting designers that start to use AI to create concepts. Now where that's going, I don't know. We were just at the beginning of that. I think this question is probably really interesting because even myself, I'm not sure whether I want to dive into that because I'm sort of post-career time in my life. Do I still want to go into that? But I think it's very, very interesting and fascinating how that impacts. I mean, you can create, I've seen conceptual designs that are created by AI and I'm like, all right, looks really nice. Can it be realized? I don't know, right? But conceptual images, yes, could be really interesting. So I don't know yet. I don't have the answer to that because it's something that really is fresh to many of us. I have to say, in my 45 years, this has been an amazing journey in lighting because when I started, I had a fluorescent tube and an incandescent lamp. That's basically, I didn't have a computer, right? The only thing that we had when I started in Philips was a huge mainframe computer that was, I don't know, the size of, I don't know, but the room was probably about 5 by 6 meters, totally air conditioned, humidity controlled and all that. I had to spend the whole afternoon in doing punch cards that I had to feed into the computer, go home to see the calculation next day it will calculate overnight. So I've come a long way from that level of technology to where we are today, where we have very innovative LED solutions, now with data input, and now I think the next step is with AI and what have you as well. So where we are going is difficult to say because you can, with AI, you can create content. That's the new element, I think, from lighting design is content creation because lights not only have all the colors of the rainbow, you can get RGBW core chips nowadays that have everything in one point. It's not RGBW, no, it's like in one little chip. You have everything, right? So you can create. So if you can drive that with data or whatever input, you can create the most interesting outcomes. One of the things we are doing with NX Mall, by the way, we are creating some sort of content-driven lighting effect. So yeah, that's a new element in which I'm not 100% sure how much I'm going to dive into that myself, but it's certainly something that you guys will have to deal with in the future.
Thank you again. My question is regarding your engagement and your skill set as a lighting designer. Who engages your services first, and does it change, part two, does it change region to region, like NX Mall, you mentioned Middle East? Who engages your services first? Developer, architect, the hotel gentleman you mentioned before? Yeah.
Good question. Most of the time, I don't want to get on your bad side, right? No, but most of the time, we are engaged directly by the client, right? Now, how do we get there? That varies. I would say 80% of our jobs are purely through referral, and the clients know us. We are registered with all the major hotel brands, for instance, whether it's Marriott, Hilton, Accor. We are on their list of approved consultants. So there's a new project, they'll put our name forward. Doesn't mean we get the job because there's others as well, right? But that comes through the front door, right? We get a call, we get an email. So 80% of our jobs at the moment, that's how we get our jobs. I don't have to go for it. We have established a level of recognition in the market and standing that we are approached directly as that project, you should go to KLD. That's nice for us to have that sort of status. Then we have our relationship with architects, interior designers, etc. Same thing, we have worked together, they have a new project. They're also sort of our marketing agents sometimes because we have had a very good relationship with them. Hey, we have this new project, you want to join us? Same thing, right? So that Sometimes we are under the architect or under the interior designer, depending. Then same with developers, but most of the time it's through clients directly. Developers, well, the developer is sometimes the client also, right? But then the actual marketing, business development, approaching them, that's only a small part of our business, which I would say I should do a bit more. I would get more work, but I'm feeling like it's okay right now. But if I would like to develop the business further, then if I do very active marketing and business development, because of our standing, our reputation, our track record, well, it should not be too difficult to get more work as well. But yeah, that's roughly how it works for us. Yeah.
Just another question. Is there any particular lighting trends that you're currently excited about? Any upcoming ones?
Lighting trends. Yeah, I'm actually doing a presentation in Guangzhou about the future of lighting design. And one of the things that are happening now is about content, right? Lighting is sort of moving away from your typical fixture into being integrated in building materials, right? So you will find carpets with integrated lighting, walls, wall material, building materials with integrated lighting, glass with integrated LED points. So that is something, and all that is dynamic, so you can create all kinds of interesting contents. That's an important development, so interactivity with building materials. We have a big trend regarding dark sky, being able to manage light pollution and things like that. That's something that becomes a bigger and bigger element. And the third one that I would like to mention is regarding health and well-being, or even biophilic design. It's like integrating the nature, the way our human body works towards lighting. I think that's also a very important trend where we look at circadian rhythms and how lighting impacts on human well-being. I think these will be the three main trends at the moment. I may have forgotten one or two, but yeah, to answer your question, that will be three main points that I would like to mention.
Thank you.
I believe that is all the questions, Martin.
No, it's fantastic. You've been great. Thank you so much for your questions.
Thank you, Martin, for sharing.
By the way, it doesn't stop here. If they still have questions, they can channel it through you or anybody else, and you can let me know. Maybe I can still afterwards.
There's an Excel spreadsheet already been circulated. No.
No, it's fine. I mean, literally, I'm not kidding. If there's still issues or questions, feel free to collate them, and I'll try to answer them in my own time. But yeah, happy to do that.
Crew, if we could give a absolutely warm, massive round of applause for Martin for sharing his insights, his learnings, his experiences over such an impressive career. Still ongoing, obviously, and there's a lot. As you said, the lighting industry is evolving and trending and changing as we speak. So let's give a warm round of applause for Mr. Martin Klaasen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.